On the left is the original AI-generated 3D file, and on the right is my remodeled version. The client wanted to 3D print the AI model, but the results came out rough with messy surfaces, so I got hired to clean it up and remodel it. I always find it interesting when clients bring AI-generated 3D files and expect them to print cleanly. It shows where the industry is heading. We're in that weird crossover era where AI can create something that looks good on the surface, but the moment you dig even a few layers deeper, edge topology, normals, printability, it falls apart. And that's where artists like us come in. We're slowly becoming the cleanup crew of the digital world, fixing the imperfections that AI doesn't understand yet, at least not fully. But while you watch this time lapse, let's talk. Because 3D art is changing so fast that if you blink, you'll miss 3 new tools, 15 plugins, a new version of Blender, and some mind-blowing demo from SIGGRAPH that makes you question whether you're actually good at your job or just temporarily ahead of the machine. And before we get too deep into it, let me say this. If you're modeling along, or sculpting, or animating, or texturing while listening to this, that's perfect. This conversation is meant to be the kind of audio you keep in the background while you grind your polygons and fight with shading nodes. So let's start from the beginning. Not the beginning of 3D art, not the beginning of your journey. Let's start with a thought every 3D artist has had at some point. Is this even good enough? You know the feeling. That hesitation before posting your work. That doubt when you see someone else's render that looks like it came straight out of a Marvel Studio pipeline and you're there tweaking one light for 30 minutes because it just doesn't feel right. But here's the truth. Every 3D artist you admire has felt the same thing. Every single one. Even the ones who pretend they've got everything under control. 3D is a constant loop of learning, doubting, improving, doubting again, breaking something, fixing it, discovering a better way, and then doubting that too. It's normal. It's the tax we pay for being in a field where technology moves faster than our brain has time to catch up. But the beauty of 3D is that the more you push, the more you start to understand that it's not about perfect. It's about control. Control over shapes, control over light, control over texture, control over how your mind translates an idea into geometry. And that's the part AI still doesn't get. It can mimic, but it doesn't understand. It can generate, but it can't justify. It can produce a mesh, but it doesn't know why a bevel should exist, or why the silhouette matters, or why a loop cut placed just 2 millimeters lower can fix an entire shape. That is still human, for now. But let's keep going. While you watch the mesh being refinished on screen, let's take a detour into something a lot of artists never talk about. How messy the process actually is. People think 3D modeling is clean, perfect, logical, linear. It's not. It's chaotic. It's full of undue shortcuts, weird methods you invented at 2 a.m., and sculpt strokes you immediately regret. Everyone acts like they follow some elegant workflow they learned in a masterclass, but 90% of us are doing. Let me extrude this. No, wait. Undo. Okay, now extrude. Nope, undo again. Let's try something else. If sculpting is painting with clay, then hard surface modeling is engineering with anxiety. But that's fine, because the real growth doesn't come from the clean matte, polished workflows. They come from the messy ones. From the times you had to fix a mistake you didn't even know was possible. From the times Blender crashed for no reason and you rebuilt the same thing twice and it looked better the second time. Now let's talk about something even more interesting. The moment AI entered the 3D space. At first it was harmless. AI was just generating concepts. Look, a spaceship idea. Look, a fantasy house. Look, a dragon wearing a hoodie. Cool, fun, inspirational. Everyone was happy. Then it started generating textures, then HDRIs, then displacement maps, then entire 3D meshes. And suddenly the community split into two groups. Group 1, AI will help us. Group 2, AI will replace us. But the truth is more complicated than either side wants to admit. AI is not here to replace artists. It's here to replace bad artists, or more accurately, repetitive tasks that never required artistry in the first place. Nobody dreams of spending their life retopologizing a rock. Nobody wakes up excited to UV unwrap 300 similar props. Nobody forms a spiritual bond with manually placing bolts on a sci-fi door panel. These are necessary tasks, but they are not the soul of the job. So AI removes the boring part, And that's fine, because if your entire value as a 3D artist relies on something repetitive, something the machine can do faster, then you were standing on shaky ground from the start. Real artists survive. Button pressers don't. Now let's get even deeper. Have you ever noticed how 3D artists always have an existential crisis at least once every 6 months? It usually sounds like, should I switch to Unreal? Should I learn Houdini? Do I need to specialize? Why does everyone on ArtStation seem better than me? Why does my render look dead? Should I quit 3D and become a farmer? We've all been there. This industry is brutal because it's global. You're not competing with artists in your city. You're competing with artists in every country, every time zone, every level of experience. And social media makes it worse because it shows you only the masterpieces, not the failed attempts. But here's something nobody tells you. You don't need to be better than everyone. You only need to be better than the version of yourself from 6 months ago. Consistency beats talent. Repetition beats inspiration. Momentum beats motivation. And that brings me to another topic, workflow discipline. 3D artists who survive long-term aren't the ones who create the best renders. They're the ones who didn't quit after failing 20 projects in a row. They're the ones who kept learning topology, even when it felt like punishment. They're the ones who kept tweaking shading nodes until the material finally made sense. You improve one loop cut at a time, one bevel at a time, one lighting experiment at a time. And if your progress feels slow, that's good. Progress that comes too fast rarely sticks. Let's talk about tools next, because tools shape us more than we admit. Blender is powerful, but Blender is also a labyrinth. Every year they add new features, remove old ones, change shortcuts, rearrange panels, sometimes for the better, sometimes just because the devs felt like having fun. But the best artists don't rely on tools. They build mental models. They understand shape. They understand form. They understand weight. They understand silhouette. If you know how to create good form, it doesn't matter whether you're using Blender, Maya, ZBrush, C4D, or a stick and a piece of sand. And speaking of form, let's talk about why the AI model in this video failed. AI-generated 3D meshes often fail because 1. They don't understand real-world print tolerances. 2. They generate surfaces that look smooth but aren't. 3. They lack proper geometry flow. 4. They create hidden self-intersecting areas. 5. They ignore scale, thickness, and support structure. AI is basically guessing, and the guess is good enough for rendering, but terrible for manufacturing. This is why I remodeled it instead of trying to fix the original mesh. Sometimes rebuilding from scratch is faster than repairing a monster. Now let's shift into something every 3D artist needs to hear. Your style matters more than your software. There are artists who can make a masterpiece with a cube, a modifier, and questionable life choices. There are others who could have every premium plugin in the world and still struggle to make a teapot look appealing. Your taste is your real skill. Your ability to judge what looks good, what looks wrong, what needs fixing. That's what separates professionals from hobbyists. And taste is trained through repetition, through observation, through studying references, through failing. You can't run from this process. You can't skip it, but you can embrace it. Let's also talk about something many artists avoid, burnout. Burnout comes when your brain gets stuck in a loop of comparison. You scroll through ArtStation, see gods among mortals, and suddenly your own work feels meaningless. But remember, what you see online is curated, filtered, selected, polished over weeks or months. You're comparing your current project to someone's best project of the year. It's not fair, and you shouldn't let it define your creative value. Now, while the time-lapse continues and the mesh starts to clean up, let's go somewhere philosophical. 3D art is the only field where you are a sculptor, a painter, an engineer, a designer, a physicist, a photographer, an animator, a technician, a storyteller, all at once. No wonder it feels overwhelming. But that's also what makes it beautiful. So when people ask why 3D takes so long, they don't understand that we're juggling disciplines that entire industries specialize in separately. Photographers spend years learning composition and lighting alone. Sculptors devote their lives to working with form. Engineers specialize in manufacturing constraints. Animators spend decades perfecting movement. And yet, as 3D artists, we're expected to know all of that. at least at a functional level, and then somehow combine it into a single project without losing our minds. And as if that wasn't enough, the software changes every 6 months. Every update brings new features that you feel obligated to learn so you don't fall behind. When Blender releases a new version, you feel both excitement and fear. Great, new tools. Great, new tools I now have to understand. But here's the secret most professionals won't admit. We don't know everything. We don't even know half of everything. We know what we need for our work, and we learn the rest when we need it. Nobody knows every shortcut. Nobody knows every modifier. Nobody knows every node. Nobody knows every rigging technique. The only artists who pretend to know everything are the ones who are too insecure to admit they're learning like the rest of us. Now let's get into something deeper. Why 3D artists feel pressure to constantly prove themselves. Part of it comes from the nature of the work. 3D art doesn't have a final form. There's always something to improve. The lighting can be better. The topology can be cleaner. The textures can be sharper. The animation can be smoother. The color grading can be more dramatic. No matter how long you work on something, there will always be one more tweak. And that loop, I can fix this, maybe, never ends. It's both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because you always have room to grow. A curse because you can drive yourself insane striving for a perfection that doesn't exist. And then you see AI generating something in 10 seconds and people online saying, wow, look at this. This is the future. Artists are finished. Meanwhile, you're sitting there knowing full well that the AI model looks amazing at a distance, but collapses the moment you zoom in. It's like those Instagram cakes that look perfect until you slice them and realize it's just foam with icing on top. AI is foam with icing. Artists bake real cakes. Now, while you're watching this model get cleaned up in the time lapse, let's talk about workflow speed. Speed doesn't come from knowing everything. Speed comes from experience. Speed comes from muscle memory, from knowing where to look when something breaks, from recognizing patterns because 3D problems repeat themselves. For example, if there's shading artifacting, you already know to check normals, overlapping verts, n-gons, unnecessary bevels, bad topology flow, shading mode, auto smooth settings, the peg. You didn't always know that. You learned it through frustration, through trial and error, through fixing the same problem 20 different times until your brain understood the pattern. That's what makes you irreplaceable. That is knowledge AI doesn't have. AI generates. But you understand. Understanding is the real skill. Now let's pivot to something every artist thinks about in silence: style identity. At first, every 3D artist copies others. It's normal. You learn by mimicking. Every professional started that way. But eventually, you need to develop your own voice. Ask yourself, what shapes do you naturally gravitate toward? What lighting moods feel like you? What color palettes do you love? What kind of imperfections do you intentionally add? What kind of materials always appear in your work? Your style is not a single feature. It's a pattern of choices repeated over time. And here's the beautiful part. Style is not something you invent. It's something you uncover. It was always in you. You just needed enough practice to see it. And speaking of practice, let's talk about the biggest lie in the 3D community. Learn everything. No, do not learn everything. You will burn out. You will get overwhelmed. You will think you're not good enough because you're trying to learn the skill set of 12 different professions simultaneously. Instead, learn what connects directly to your goals. If you want to be a character artist, don't waste months learning motion tracking. If you want to be a product visualizer, you don't need to master rigging. If you want to do hard surface, you don't need to specialize in hair grooming. If you want to build stylized art, you don't need photorealism tutorials. Focus wins. Wide learning without direction just exhausts you. Now let's talk about something real. 3D takes time. People outside the field don't understand this. Clients think 3D is magic. Can you do this by tomorrow? No. Why? Because I'm not a wizard. You can't rush topology. You can't fast forward sculpting details. You can't demand photoreal rendering with no rendering time. You can't UV unwrap at the speed of thought. Good 3D is slow because good art is slow, because precision is slow. And that's why what you're watching on this time lapse is compressed time. Hours of modeling turned into minutes, the illusion of speed. But in reality, this took focus, consistency, discipline, one decision at a time. Now let's dive into something extremely important for any artist who wants to grow. Reference is not cheating. People who don't use reference are not geniuses. They're inefficient. Every professional uses reference. You cannot model what you cannot visualize. You cannot texture what you cannot analyze. You cannot light what you don't understand about real-world lighting. Reference is your map, your source of truth, your reminder of what the world actually looks like. Now let's talk about 3D environments. Environment artists are built differently. They handle scale, composition, lighting, modular design, storytelling, technical optimization, camera paths, world building all at once. If you're an environment artist listening to this, you deserve a trophy because you basically built a universe on your computer. Now let's shift into something philosophical again. Every 3D model is a conversation between you and the mesh. You push, it pushes back. You add a loop, it changes shape. You bevel an edge, it creates new tension. You sculpt a crease. The silhouette evolves. 3D is not force, it's negotiation. Every vertex is a decision. Every edge is a compromise. Every face is a commitment. And that leads me to something personal. The reason I love doing remodel jobs like the one in this video is because you get to translate chaos into clarity. Something that was broken becomes functional. Something that was messy becomes clean. Something that couldn't be printed becomes a solid object. It's oddly therapeutic. And while you watch the mesh get refined, let's talk about the future. AI will get better. It will generate cleaner models. It will understand topology eventually. It will know about printability. It will learn about physical constraints. But here's what AI will never replace: taste, creativity, artistic instinct, the ability to feel shape, the ability to choose what to exaggerate and what to simplify, the gut feeling that says, this needs one more bevel. AI can guess. Only humans can judge. And judgment is everything in 3D. Judgment is the difference between a model that feels stiff and a model that feels alive. Judgment is what makes you decide that a cylinder needs 8 sides instead of 6. Judgment is what tells you that a material is too glossy, or a light is too harsh, or an animation feels floaty, or a model feels off balance. AI doesn't have judgment. You do. And that's why you're valuable. Now, let's dive into one of the deepest truths of 3D art. Your eye improves faster than your hands. Meaning, you start noticing mistakes long before you know how to fix them. This creates a painful gap. You see imperfections everywhere. Your topology isn't clean enough. Your materials look flat. Your lighting feels wrong. Your characters look stiff. Your sculpting lacks anatomy. Your props feel generic. Your renders look empty. You notice all of that, but you can't fix most of it yet. Every artist in history has suffered through this phase. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Your eyes need to level up before your skills can catch up. And if you're feeling that gap right now, that means you're improving. Now let's shift gears into something many 3D artists deal with: the perfection trap. You know the drill. You start a model. You block it out. It looks promising. Then you start refining. Then you add details. Then you adjust proportions. Then you readjust. Then you tweak. Then you retweak. Then you get stuck staring at the same part for an hour thinking this should look better. At some point, your model stops improving and starts shape-shifting. You're not moving forward, you're moving sideways. That's when you need to stop. Because perfection is a moving target. Chasing it means never finishing anything, and finishing teaches you more than perfection ever will. Now let's talk about software loyalty, one of the funniest wars in the creative world. Blender users think Maya users are old school. Maya users think Blender users are chaotic and overly enthusiastic. Cinema 4D users think everyone else is too serious. ZBrush users are, well, ZBrush users. They live in their own sculpting universe. Houdini users are basically wizards doing black magic in the corner. Unreal Engine users talk like they're building the next AAA game, even if they're only lighting a living room. Unity users survive. It's all jokes, but there's truth in it. Every software shapes your brain differently. But let me tell you something important. Nobody cares what software you use. Clients don't care. Studios barely care. Viewers don't care. They care about the result. The tool is irrelevant if the output is strong. Now, let's go deeper into something that matters more than tools: mindset. 3D requires patience, unlike anything else. You sculpt, and it doesn't look right. You model, and it collapses in on itself. You texture, and the UVs stretch. You light, and everything looks flat. You render, and it takes 20 minutes to show you that your shadows are wrong. But if you keep going, if you push through the frustration, if you remain patient enough to solve each problem one by one, you become unstoppable. Because patience is a superpower in 3D. It's the difference between artists who quit and artists who grow. Now let's dive into a topic that every 3D artist eventually encounters: the pipeline illusion. People think a pipeline is neat, clean, perfectly structured, a straight line from concept to final render. In reality, a pipeline looks like a bowl of spaghetti that someone threw at the wall. You go back and forth between stages constantly. You adjust topology after texturing. You change UVs after shading. You fix sculpting after rigging. You tweak proportions after lighting. You redo a material after animating. It's never linear, and it doesn't have to be. What matters is progress, not order. Now let's talk about something deeper: why 3D artists are obsessed with details. Because details create believability, not realism, believability. Even stylized art needs detail, but intentional detail, not noise, not clutter, but the right kind of detail at the right place. A single bevel can change a silhouette, a single roughness variation can give life to a material, a single shadow can change the mood of a scene, a single color shift can breathe warmth into a render. Details matter, but they matter because they serve a purpose, not because they fill space. Now let's jump into one of the biggest truths of this industry. 3D art is emotional, not in the deep artistic suffering way, in the very real sense that your mood affects your work. When you're confident, you make bold decisions. When you're tired, you cling to safe choices. When you're inspired, you experiment. When you're burned out, your work looks flatter, stiffer, less alive. Your mental state bleeds into your mesh, into your strokes, into your lighting, into your creativity. That's why rest is part of the workflow. Burnout destroys more 3D artists than lack of skill ever did. Now let's explore a topic every artist eventually faces: the plateau. You'll hit it multiple times in your career. It's when you feel like you're not improving anymore. Your work looks the same. Your renders feel repetitive. Your progress feels frozen. But a plateau is not stagnation, it's incubation. Your brain is reorganizing everything you've learned. It's the calm before your next breakthrough. And breakthroughs always come, not when you force them, but when you stay consistent long enough for your skill to level up underneath the surface. Now let's talk about something fun: 3D artists and imposter syndrome. 3D is notorious for making even skilled artists feel like beginners. You can finish a beautiful model, feel proud, and then see someone else's work and suddenly question your entire career. Should I even be doing this? Am I good enough? Is my style weak? Why does my lighting always look wrong? But here's the truth: every artist you admire feels the same way. Even industry legends question themselves. Self-doubt is not a weakness, it's a sign that you care about your craft. Now let's shift into something practical: learning strategy. People think they improve by watching 100 tutorials, but that's wrong. You improve by doing 100 projects. You can watch tutorials forever and never grow if you don't practice. Because tutorials give you information, but personal projects give you understanding. Your brain learns by solving problems, not by watching someone else solve them. Now let's go into a topic every 3D artist secretly struggles with: finishing projects. We all have unfinished sculpts, half-modeled props, abandoned environments, incomplete characters, shelved animations, half-textured models. The graveyard of unfinished work is huge. But here's something important: finishing is a skill. It doesn't come naturally. You have to train it like anything else. When you finish a project, even a simple one, you teach your brain how to close loops, how to complete the arc, how to push through the boring parts. Finishing teaches discipline. Discipline builds mastery. Now let's talk about something everyone is curious about: the future of 3D careers. Will AI take over? Will artists still be needed? Will jobs disappear? Here's the real answer: the industry will change, but artists won't disappear. Because creativity isn't execution, it's direction, it's decision-making, it's intentionality, it's vision. AI can produce options, but it can't choose the best one. It can't justify artistic choices. It can't innovate beyond its training data. It can't imagine something truly new. Artists aren't just makers, artists are thinkers. And thinkers don't get replaced, they redefine the tools. Now, let's go deeper into something many 3D artists don't fully realize. Most of your growth will come from invisible practice. Not the flashy pieces you post online, not the renders that get likes, not the polished projects you show in your portfolio. Your real improvement comes from the quiet, messy, unposted things. The models you delete, the sculpting sessions, you abandon the lighting tests. Nobody sees the materials you experiment with, the anatomy sketches you never render, the failed simulations, the broken rigs, the ugly renders, the practice files scattered across your hard drive. Those failures are not wasted. They are not embarrassing. They are not signs of incompetence. They are the foundation of your mastery. Every great artist has a hidden mountain of bad work behind them. You just don't see it because the internet only shows finished pieces, not the hundreds of attempts it took to get there. Now let's talk about something that affects every artist at some point. Creative drought. You open Blender, you stare at the screen, you don't know what to make, nothing inspires you. Everything feels pointless. It happens to everyone. Creative droughts don't mean you're not an artist. They mean your brain is absorbing information, regrouping, resetting, getting ready for the next idea. Creativity is a cycle, not an infinite stream. When you feel empty, you're in the recharge phase. That's normal. And pushing yourself during a drought usually creates frustration instead of improvement. What helps? Consuming art, studying references, watching films, analyzing design, reading, exploring real objects, walking outside, observing shapes and light. Creativity comes from curiosity. If you're not curious, you're burnt out. If you're burnt out, you need rest, not productivity. Now, while this time lapse continues, let's talk about something deeply practical: the difference between good topology and functional topology. A lot of beginners obsess over perfect loops. They think good topology means everything looks like textbook wireframes, even spacing, perfect flow, clean grids, no triangles. But professionals know something else. Good topology is the one that works for the task. If you're creating a cinematic close-up, a rigged character, a game-ready asset, a subdivision-heavy object, a 3D print, a high-resolution sculpt, base and architectural model, each one requires a different kind of topology. There is no universal perfect mesh. There is only purpose-built topology. And this remodel you're watching right now, it's built for printing, not for animation, not for deformation, not for real-time use. It's built for physical production. And that's a completely different workflow. Which brings me to the next point. Artists grow the fastest when they understand why, not just how. Anyone can press buttons, anyone can follow tutorials, anyone can learn a technique. But professionals ask, why does this technique work? Why is this edge loop needed? Why does this deformation break? Why does this lighting look dull? Why does this material feel flat? Understanding the why unlocks creative freedom. It turns you from an operator into an artist. Now let's talk about a topic that many people underestimate. Lighting is everything. Lighting can make a bad model look decent. Lighting can make a good model look incredible. Lighting can make an incredible model look terrible. Great lighting artists are rare because lighting is both science and intuition. You need to understand color temperature, shadow softness, contrast ratios, bounce light, rim lights, volumetrics, exposure, camera response curves. But you also need the eye, and that eye develops slowly. If you're struggling with lighting, don't worry. Everyone does. Lighting is a lifelong skill. Now let's go deeper into something that affects every 3D pipeline: materials and surfaces. Most beginners think materials are about sliders: roughness, metallic, specular, done. But real materials are so much more complex. Real surfaces have micro details, imperfections, smudges, variations, subtle color shifts, organic irregularities, aging wear, historical context. Materials tell a story. A scratched metal surface means the object lived a life. A clean reflective surface means it's fresh or unused. A rough surface means it's old or worn. Even stylized materials need intentional imperfection. Perfect materials feel fake. Realism comes from controlled chaos. Now let's shift into something more personal: the psychology of creating. 3D art is not just technical, it's emotional. Your mental state influences your output more than most people realize. When you're confident, you experiment. When you're insecure, you play safe. When you're inspired, you take risks. When you're tired, you cut corners. When you're happy, your work has rhythm. When you're stressed, your work feels stiff. That's why learning to manage your emotions is part of being an artist. Now, let me tell you a truth that will save you years of frustration. Most of your breakthroughs happen accidentally. You'll be experimenting, trying something random, clicking a button you've never used before, and suddenly, you discover a technique you'll use for the next 5 years. Some of the best workflows in the industry came from accidents: a wrong click, a weird setting, a failed render, a broken mesh, a mistake that turned into a style. This is why curiosity is the engine of growth, not perfection, not discipline alone. Curiosity. Speaking of curiosity, let's talk about innovation in 3D. Innovation doesn't come from tools. Tools evolve because artists push them to their limits. Every new Blender feature exists because of some artist who said, "This is too slow. This should be easier. There must be a better way." Artists drive technology, not the other way around. Now let's talk about something often ignored: the loneliness of 3D work. 3D is a solitary craft. You spend hours in front of a screen. Just you and the mesh. Just you and the scene. Just you and the problems. It's fulfilling, but it's isolating. Most people don't understand what you do. They don't understand why it takes so long. They don't understand why you can spend an hour adjusting one tiny detail. They don't understand the beauty of watching something evolve from zero to finished. But you do. And that's enough. Still, it helps to remember, you're not alone. Every 3D artist in the world works in that same quiet space. We're all connected by the same struggles, the same triumphs, the same frustrations, the same joy. Now let's go deeper into the role of storytelling in 3D. Even the simplest model tells a story. Even a cube placed in the right lighting tells a story. Every object has intent. Every scene has emotional weight. Every composition leads the viewer's eye. 3D is storytelling through shape, texture, and light. And mastering storytelling is what separates technical artists from unforgettable ones. Now let's talk about something very real. Your taste will always be better than your skill. This is a problem because your eye notices imperfections that your hands can't fix yet. But this gap is also the reason you improve. You keep chasing your taste. Your skills keep chasing your vision. And over time, they slowly match. One day you'll create something and think, yes, this finally looks like what I imagined. That moment is priceless. And when that moment finally happens, when your work matches your taste, even for just a few seconds, something shifts inside you. You begin to understand that mastery isn't a sudden transformation. It's a slow accumulation of tiny breakthroughs. It's the result of showing up again and again, even when your work disappoints you, even when you feel stuck, even when your progress feels invisible. Because improvement in 3D isn't loud. It's quiet. It's subtle. It's the extra bevel you add without thinking. It's the lighting angle you adjust instinctively. It's the sculpt stroke you place with confidence. It's the topology decision you make without hesitation. It's the camera framing that feels natural instead of forced. These micro skills add up. They build your instinct. They sharpen your artistic reflexes. They turn you into someone who doesn't just follow tutorials, but someone who creates with intention. Now let's dive deeper into something that transforms every artist: the power of observation. The best 3D artists aren't the ones who know the most tools. They're the ones who see the most. They notice how light wraps around a face at golden hour. They notice how roughness varies across a metal railing. They notice how fabric folds around joints. They notice how dust gathers in crevices. They notice how silhouettes convey weight and personality. They notice how objects age, deform, and weather. Improving your observation skills is like upgrading your brain. Suddenly, the world becomes a library of textures, shapes, materials, and lighting references. Every environment you step into becomes a lesson. Every object you touch becomes data. Every reflection becomes information. Every shadow becomes a clue. You begin to understand the world differently, not as a passive viewer, but as an analyst. That's when your 3D work evolves from imitation to interpretation. Now let's go deeper into one of the most misunderstood skills in the field: composition. Composition is the invisible force that guides the viewer's eye. It decides whether your render feels cinematic or flat. It decides whether your character feels imposing or weak. It decides whether your scene feels balanced or chaotic. And yet, Many 3D artists skip composition entirely. They focus on modeling, they focus on shading, they focus on lighting, but they forget the number one rule of visual storytelling. If your composition is wrong, nothing else can save the image. Composition teaches you where to place your subject, how to frame your shot, how to guide attention, how to create depth, how to build tension, how to balance shapes, how to use negative space, how to create emotion through visual structure. Composition is not optional, it's foundational. Now let's talk about another foundational pillar: silhouette. If your model doesn't look interesting in pure black and white outline, no amount of detail will fix it. Silhouette is the first read. It's the most important read. It decides whether your design is memorable. Iconic characters have iconic silhouettes. Iconic props do too. Iconic vehicles, environments, creatures, all of them rely on silhouette. Beginners add details. Masters add clarity. Now let's transition into something every artist must face: the intimidation of advanced software. Houdini looks like a nuclear control panel. ZBrush looks like a spaceship dashboard. Blender looks manageable until you open the node editor. Substance Painter looks simple until you start building custom materials. Maya looks like it was designed by a different species. And in the midst of all this complexity, every artist has that moment where they think, I will never understand this. But here's the truth: you don't learn everything. You learn one thing at a time, one tool, one workflow, one problem, solved repeatedly until it becomes instinct. Mastery is not about memorizing software, it's about building mental frameworks. Once you understand concepts like how light behaves, how materials interact, how shapes communicate, how composition works, you can translate those concepts into any software. Tools change, principles don't. Now let's talk about something extremely real: the pressure to specialize. The 3D industry loves labels: character artist, hard surface modeler, environment artist, animator, FX artist, technical artist, rigger lighting artist, compositor, generalist. People act like you must choose one forever. But here's the truth: you can specialize when you're ready, not when the industry demands it. Some artists need to explore before they commit. Some artists need to experiment with many disciplines before discovering their passion. Some artists become specialists early. Some artists become specialists late. Some artists never specialize and thrive as generalists. Specialization is not linear. It's not mandatory. It's not urgent. Find what excites you. Find what frustrates you in a fun way. Find what makes you lose track of time. Your passion will reveal your specialty naturally. Now let's shift into something a lot of artists are scared to admit. You don't have to love every part of 3D. Maybe you love sculpting but hate retopology. Maybe you love modeling but hate UV unwrapping. Maybe you love texturing but hate rigging. Maybe you love lighting but hate animation. That's fine. You're not required to love everything. People act like real artists enjoy every step. They don't. Real artists enjoy enough steps to complete the process and endure the rest because the result is worth it. And if you eventually join a studio or team, you won't be doing everything anyway. Now let's talk about something that transforms your workflow: iteration. The first version of anything you create will be the worst version, but each iteration makes it better. Each revision improves the clarity. Each pass sharpens the shape. Each lighting change enhances the mood. Iteration is the engine of refinement. Rushing to finish kills your potential. Taking too long kills your momentum. The sweet spot is learning when to stop iterating and when to push further. That balance comes with experience, not rules. Now, while you're watching the remodel evolve in this time lapse, let's go into something philosophical. 3D art is controlled transformation. You start with nothing. You add form. You refine. You correct. You polish. You evolve the object. It's a conversation, a negotiation, a slow sculpting of purpose. And sometimes the model teaches you something about yourself: your patience, your taste, your habits, your strengths, your weaknesses, your attention to detail, your tolerance for frustration, your instinct for beauty. Your art is a mirror, not of your skill, but of your growth. Now let's dive into something even deeper: why 3D feels so rewarding. Because when you model something, you're not just creating an image, you're creating an object that could exist. Something with weight, something with form, something with purpose, something that could be printed, animated, textured, lit, or placed in a world. You're building reality piece by piece, something that didn't exist now exists because of you. That power is addictive. That power is motivating. That power is why artists endure the frustration, the complexity, the endless learning curve. Now let's move into something essential for long-term growth: feedback. Good feedback accelerates your journey. Bad feedback can stall it. No feedback keeps you blind. You need eyes other than your own. Artists who can spot structural issues, artists who can suggest improvements, artists who can challenge your assumptions. Feedback is not criticism, it's collaboration. It's someone helping you see what you can't see yet. And the artists who grow the fastest are the ones who seek feedback fearlessly. Now let's talk about something many artists avoid: showing unfinished work. People fear judgment. People think unfinished work is embarrassing. People think only polished pieces deserve to be seen. But unfinished work reveals process. Process reveals growth. Growth reveals potential. Showing your work in progress helps you. Get feedback early. Build confidence. Break perfectionism. Track improvement. Document your journey. Your whip is not a weakness. It's a roadmap of your evolution. And speaking of evolution, let's talk about the moment when you finally start recognizing your own artistic voice. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly. One day you look at your work and think, oh, this looks like me. Not because you forced a style, but because your instincts shaped the choices without you noticing. Your proportions, your color choices, your lighting approach, your silhouettes, all of them begin forming a consistent pattern. That pattern becomes your style, and your style becomes your identity. But artists often misunderstand style. They think it's something you create deliberately, something you choose, something you design from scratch. But style isn't intentional. It's inevitable. It emerges from your decisions, your experiences, your influences, your flaws, your strengths, your taste. You can't outrun your style because it's a reflection of everything you've learned, everything you've felt, everything you've practiced. Now let's move into something real. Your best work will come when you stop trying to impress people, when you stop chasing likes, when you stop comparing yourself to other artists, when you stop worrying about trends, when you stop trying to fit in with the current visual culture. Your best work appears when you focus on the craft instead of the reaction. The moment you stop creating for validation, you start creating for mastery. And mastery is where true growth happens. Now let's jump into a topic that's often ignored but incredibly important: 3D art and problem solving. Every single project you touch is a chain of problems. How do I model this shape? How do I fix this topology? How do I unwrap these UVs? How do I recreate this texture? How do I light this scene? How do I make this composition stronger? How do I make this animation feel natural? How do I optimize this for real time? How do I render this in a reasonable amount of time? Every step is an obstacle. Every decision is a puzzle. That's why 3D artists develop an unusual kind of intelligence: practical problem-solving instinct. We don't panic when things break. We troubleshoot. We don't freeze when a tool fails. We find a workaround. We don't give up when a render crashes. We test settings, isolate issues, and try again. 3D teaches resilience. 3D teaches adaptability. 3D teaches creative logic. Now let's dive deeper into something emotional: accepting your pace. People learn at different speeds. Some artists explode in skill within months. Others improve slowly, steadily, quietly. Some artists plateau early. Some artists bloom late. Some artists take years before things finally click. There's no correct timeline. There's no universal clock. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not slow. Your journey is yours. Comparing your progress to someone else's is like comparing the growth rate of different trees. Some shoot upward quickly. Some grow deep roots first. Some expand widely. Some rise slowly but become the strongest in the forest. What matters is that you keep growing. Now let's go into something many artists fear: the fear of failure. Failure feels painful because it threatens our sense of identity. When your art fails, you feel like you failed. When your model looks bad, you feel like you aren't good enough. When your render disappoints you, you feel like you lack talent. But failure is not the enemy. Failure is the teacher. Every failed project shows you what to fix next. Every mistake reveals a blind spot. Every bad render pushes you toward better lighting, better materials, better technique. Failure gives direction. Success gives confirmation. You need both. Now let's talk about identity crisis in 3D, another universal experience. One day you feel like a character artist. The next day you feel like a hard surface modeler. The next day you feel like an environment artist. The next day you feel like quitting 3D entirely and becoming a fisherman. Creative identity is fluid. It changes as you grow. It evolves with your taste. It shifts with your skills. It adapts with your goals. You don't need to lock yourself into a single identity. Let your art evolve with you. Now let's explore something extremely practical: technical debt in 3D. When you rush a project, you accumulate technical debt: messy topology, sloppy UVs, disorganized node setups, broken rig controllers, inconsistent naming conventions, chaotic folders, bad file structure, no backups, random materials scattered everywhere. At first, it seems fine. You think, I'll fix this later. But later never comes. And when you return to the project, everything is a disaster. You don't know where anything is. You don't know how anything works. You don't know why certain settings are the way they are. Good organization isn't a waste of time. It's the thing that saves you from losing your mind. Now let's go deeper into the philosophy of 3D creativity. 3D art is the marriage of logic and imagination. Logic gives structure. Imagination gives life. Logic ensures your topology works, your rig deforms properly, your materials behave realistically. Imagination ensures your design is compelling, your shapes are interesting, your scenes tell stories. Too much logic makes your work cold and empty. Too much imagination makes your work technically broken. Balance is everything. Now, let's address something many artists deal with silently: feeling invisible. You post your work, you get little traction, you get few likes, you get no comments, nobody shares your render, nobody reacts. And you start thinking, is my work bad? Is anyone even seeing me? Should I give up? Does this even matter? But here's the truth: most professional artists spent years being invisible, years of posting, years of improving, years of being overlooked. Visibility is slow, recognition is slow, momentum is slow. But every project you finish brings you closer. Every improvement compounds. Every render builds your archive of skill. Invisibility is not a sign of failure, it's the training stage. And one day, your work will hit. One day, someone will notice. One day, your skills will match your ambition. One day, your art will speak loud enough for people to hear. Now let's go into something foundational: decision making. 3D art is thousands of micro decisions. Where should this edge go? How sharp should this bevel be? Is this too saturated? Should I push the silhouette out more? Does this lighting direction make sense? Should I use procedural textures or hand-painted ones? Should I subdivide more? Should I simplify instead? At first, every decision feels heavy. You question everything. You overthink everything. You experiment endlessly. But with experience, decisions become instinctive. You don't think, you know. Your judgment sharpens. Your eye guides your hand. Your workflow becomes fluid instead of hesitant. That's the moment when you realize you've crossed into a new level. Now let's dive into something philosophical: the relationship between frustration and growth. Frustration isn't a sign that you're failing. Frustration is a sign that you're learning something hard. Every time you hit a wall, your brain is forming new connections. Every time a project feels impossible, you're expanding your limits. Every time you feel stuck, you're growing beneath the surface. Frustration is the shadow of improvement. Now let's talk about something real. Your first good model won't feel good, because your taste will already be ahead of your skill. You'll know it's not perfect. You'll see flaws immediately. You'll compare it to your favorite artists and think, I'm nowhere close. But that first good model is monumental. It's the line between beginner and intermediate. It's the moment you realize you can actually do this. It's the moment where possibility becomes real. And after that breakthrough, your growth accelerates. Now, let's talk about something extremely important: trusting your artistic instinct. In the beginning, you follow tutorials, you obey instructions, you copy workflows, you mimic techniques. But eventually, you must trust yourself. You must trust your eye. You must trust your judgment. You must trust your creative choices. Instinct isn't magic. It's experience disguised as intuition. And the more you create, the stronger your instinct becomes. And once your instinct begins to guide you, something incredible happens. You stop feeling lost. Not because you suddenly know everything, but because you trust that you can figure out anything. That confidence is what turns beginners into artists and artists into professionals. Now, let's explore something that every 3D artist eventually discovers. Your creative identity is shaped by your limitations. People think limitations are bad. They think limited hardware is a disadvantage. They think limited time ruins creativity. They think limited experience restricts them. But limitations force creativity. If your computer can't handle millions of polygons, you learn efficiency. If your deadline is short, you learn prioritization. If your skills are limited, you learn resourcefulness. If your textures are simple, you learn composition. If your lighting is basic, you learn shape language. Constraints breed mastery. Unlimited freedom leads to chaos. But limitations guide your focus. Now let's shift into something personal, the relationship between you and your tools. Every artist has a unique conversation with their software. You begin recognizing patterns, how Blender reacts when something breaks, how ZBrush behaves with certain brushes, how Substance Painter handles layering, how Unreal responds to different lighting setups, how Maya handles rigging quirks, how Houdini sometimes feels like solving a puzzle written by aliens. Tools aren't just tools. They become collaborators. You learn to anticipate their mistakes. You learn to exploit their strengths. You learn to work around their weaknesses. Over time, you and your tools develop a silent understanding, a workflow rhythm unique to you. Now let's talk about something people underestimate. Your first 1,000 hours are just warm-up. 3D is too big, too deep, too complex for mastery to come quickly. 1,000 hours is enough to understand the basics, recognize good shapes, learn workflow patterns, get comfortable with tools, start developing an eye for detail. But the next 1,000 hours are where you refine. And the 1,000 after that are where you find your voice. And the 1,000 after that are where your voice becomes consistent. Mastery is a marathon, not a sprint. Now, let's move into something essential: visual literacy. Visual literacy is your ability to read images the way others read text. It allows you to understand depth cues, perspective, weight distribution, color harmony, focal points, visual balance, gesture, flow, movement, negative space, hierarchy, mood. When you develop visual literacy, you stop guessing and start seeing. Most beginners guess their way through a render. Professionals read the image and fix it with intent. Visual literacy is what makes your scenes feel alive. Now let's talk about an area where many 3D artists struggle: the middle stage of a project. The beginning is exciting. The ending is rewarding. But the middle? The middle is chaos. This is the stage where the model looks ugly, the textures look flat, the lighting looks boring, the composition feels empty, the details aren't added yet, the shapes aren't refined yet, the mood isn't established yet. The middle stage is where most artists give up, because the project doesn't look good yet. It doesn't reflect your vision. It doesn't excite you anymore. It feels like a burden. But professionals know something. This ugly middle is normal. Every masterpiece was hideous halfway through. Every iconic render was disappointing halfway through. Every great model was rough, awkward, incomplete halfway through. The middle stage is not failure. It's transition. And pushing through it is what separates from abandoned files. Now let's talk about something important for confidence: learning to see improvement in your own work. Because improvement is subtle. It's not huge jumps. It's not overnight transformations. It's not sudden breakthroughs. Improvement looks like your topology being cleaner, your proportions being more accurate, your materials having more depth, your lighting being more intentional, your scenes feeling less empty, your silhouettes being stronger, your renders feeling more polished. Small improvements compound, and one day, you'll look back at your old work and realize how far you've come, even if you didn't feel yourself improving in the moment. Now let's go deeper. Your art is shaped by what you consume. If you only consume mediocre visuals, your work will reflect that. But if you fill your mind with great films, strong photography, powerful concept art, compelling design, bold architecture, nature's complexity, artistic compositions, creative lighting, sculpture, illustration, animation, real objects, your taste evolves upward. Artists are built from influence, not imitation, but influence. Your inspirations form the scaffolding of your creativity. Now let's talk about the emotional cycle of every 3D project because it's shockingly universal. It usually goes like this. Stage 1, excitement. This idea is amazing. Stage 2, confidence. I can totally do this. Stage 3, reality. Okay, this is harder than I thought. Stage 4, doubt. Why does this look terrible? Stage 5, frustration. I hate this project. I hate 3D. I hate everything. Stage 6, breakthrough. Oh, wait, that actually looks good. Stage 7, obsession. Let me polish this one detail for 2 more hours. Stage 8, satisfaction. This is the best thing I've ever made. Stage 9, boredom. I never want to see this file again. This cycle is so normal that if you're not experiencing it, you're probably not challenging yourself. Now let's shift into something technical but important. The value of simplicity. Beginners overcomplicate everything. Too much geometry, too many materials, too many details, too many lights. But professionals simplify. They reduce, they refine, they remove noise. They focus on essentials. Simplicity doesn't mean lack of detail, it means clarity of design. The best 3D art is clean, intentional, focused. Now let's talk about something that frustrates many artists: render disappointment. You work for hours. You model, you texture, you light, you polish. Then you hit render, and the result looks underwhelming. This happens because the lighting isn't pushing the forms, the materials lack depth, the color grading is flat, the composition is weak, the shadows are too soft or too harsh, the contrast is off, the camera angle isn't cinematic. Rendering is an art form, and it requires its own study. Now let's shift into something deeper. Your art doesn't need to impress everyone. Your work won't resonate with everyone. Your style won't appeal to everyone. Your projects won't be universally loved, but your art will speak to the people it's meant for, and those people will recognize your voice. Now let's explore something fundamental: patience with yourself. You will make ugly models. You will create bad renders. You will misunderstand techniques. You will misjudge proportions. You will over-detail one area and under-detail another. You will make technical mistakes. You will forget to save your file. You will lose work to a crash. You will redo something 3 times. You will want to quit. But the only artists who fail permanently are the ones who stop. The ones who keep going always reach the next level. Now let's talk about something powerful: the beauty of small improvements. Every day you learn something tiny: how an edge redirect improves flow, how a bevel changes mood, how a roughness map adds character, how lighting affects color perception, how silhouettes guide attention, how camera lenses shape emotion. Each small improvement stacks, and after months of stacking, you become a different artist. Now let's go into something philosophical about 3D. You are creating illusions. 3D is not reality. It's an illusion of reality. You convince the viewer that this object has weight, this surface has texture, this light is warm, this world has atmosphere, this character has emotion, this scene has history, this material has life. The entire craft is tricking the eye. We are illusionists with geometry. Now let's talk about something practical but powerful. Every project teaches you a new lesson. One project teaches you lighting, one teaches you topology, one teaches you texture detail, one teaches you color balance. One teaches you posing, one teaches you camera composition, one teaches you optimization, one teaches you design discipline. Your growth is cumulative, built project by project. Now let's shift into something highly relevant to this remodel time-lapse. Fixing someone else's work teaches you more than doing your own. When you remodel or repair a broken mesh, you learn what not to do, common mistakes, structural weaknesses, poor topology patterns, printing issues, collision problems, surface noise, shading errors, geometry artifacts. Fixing broken work builds deep knowledge. It teaches you to recognize problems instantly, and that makes you faster, smarter, and more intuitive. Now let's talk about something extremely real. Your art will never feel perfect to you. Even your best work will feel like it could be better. This is normal. This is healthy. This is part of growth. If you ever create something that feels flawless, that means you've stopped improving. The hunger for better is what keeps you rising. Now let's end this part with something powerful. The moment you realize you were always capable, you just needed time. You didn't lack talent. You lacked experience. You lacked repetition. You lacked patience. You lacked confidence. You lacked hours. But now you're building them. Now you're growing. Now your work is evolving. Now your eye is sharpening. Now your instinct is forming. Now your style is emerging. You're not just learning 3D, you're becoming an artist. And once you begin to feel yourself becoming an artist, not just a tool user, something shifts permanently. You stop approaching 3D like a checklist of techniques and start approaching it like a language. Because that's exactly what 3D is, another language, a visual language spoken through shape, light, and surface. And like any language, fluency comes from immersion. The more time you spend modeling, sculpting, lighting, texturing, rendering, the more fluent you become. You stop translating ideas into actions. You execute them instantly. You stop hesitating. You stop second guessing. You stop overthinking every loop cut. Your decisions flow. Your choices connect. Your judgment becomes natural. Now let's talk about something that every 3D artist eventually wakes up to. You will never finish learning. There is no final level. There is no I know everything now. There is no credit roll. There is no mastery stage where the journey ends. New tools appear. New workflows emerge. New techniques evolve. New artists push the boundaries of what's possible. And instead of being discouraged by that, you eventually embrace it. Because endless learning means endless growth. Endless growth means endless potential. And endless potential means you will never outgrow the craft. That's what keeps 3D exciting. There is always somewhere new to go. Now let's talk about something deeper than software, deeper than skills, why you create. Every 3D artist has a reason. Some create because they love beauty. Some create because they love design. Some create because they love problem solving. Some create because they love storytelling. Some create because they love world building. Some create because they love the quiet of working alone. Some create because they want to inspire. Some create because they want to express emotions they can't put into words. No matter what drives you, that drive is the core of your artistic identity. And when you feel lost, overwhelmed, or uninspired, return to that core. Return to the reason you started. Now let's go into something every artist, especially 3D artists, must confront: perfectionism disguised as procrastination. You know this feeling. You want to start a project, but you don't. Not because you're lazy, not because you're uninspired, but because you're afraid it won't look as good as you imagine. So you wait. You wait for more skill. You wait for better tools. You wait for more time. You wait for the perfect idea. You wait for motivation. But waiting is procrastination wearing a perfectionist mask. The only way to make good art is to make bad art first. No shortcuts, no exceptions. Start ugly, improve later. Now let's talk about workflow evolution, because this is where many artists get stuck. Beginners use tutorials. Intermediates copy professionals. Advanced artists build their own workflows. Masters simplify their workflows. At first, tutorials give you direction. Then, copying gives you practice. Then, building your own workflow gives you identity. And simplifying gives you power. Simplicity is the final stage of mastery. Now let's explore something that transforms your speed and confidence: predictability. When you fix enough problems, when you model enough shapes, when you light enough scenes, when you texture enough surfaces, you begin predicting issues before they happen. You start anticipating the final look before you begin. You start adjusting early instead of correcting late. You start working forward, not backward. Predictability is the secret weapon of efficiency. Now let's shift into a topic many artists misunderstand. Creativity is not inspiration, it's discipline. Inspiration makes you start. Discipline makes you finish. If you rely on inspiration, you will create occasionally. If you rely on discipline, you will create consistently. Consistent creation beats occasional brilliance every time. Now let's get into something extremely practical: reference stacking. When you gather references, not one, not two, but many, you begin to understand your subject deeply. Reference stacking teaches you the truth behind form, the nuance behind texture, the patterns behind design, the commonality behind variations. Good references don't limit creativity, they empower it. Now let's talk about thinking in 3D. Beginners think in 2D. They see the model from one angle. They design shapes only from the camera's view. But professionals think in full 3D. They rotate, they check silhouettes, they test proportions from multiple angles. They consider depth, thickness, curvature, and negative space. Thinking in 3D is a milestone in your artistic evolution. Now let's explore something emotional: the loneliness of improvement. When you improve, people won't always notice. Your friends won't understand what changed. Your followers won't appreciate subtle refinements. Your family won't see the progress. Even you won't feel it most days. Growth is quiet. Progress is subtle. Mastery is invisible until it isn't. You don't notice the improvement while you're inside it, but others will notice one day, suddenly, dramatically. Now let's dive into something foundational. Intuition is trained. Every decision you make in 3D, every loop cut, every sculpt stroke, every lighting angle trains your intuition. With time, your brain recognizes patterns faster than you consciously can. You start feeling what looks right, feeling what feels wrong, feeling what needs adjustment. Intuition is experience compressed into instinct. Now let's shift into something fun, the joy of solving visual puzzles. Every shape is a puzzle. Every material is a puzzle. Every lighting setup is a puzzle. Every topology flow is a puzzle. Every composition is a puzzle. Solving these puzzles becomes addictive. You start enjoying the struggle. You start enjoying the process. You start enjoying the challenge itself. The joy of 3D doesn't just come from the final render, it comes from the solving. Now let's address something nobody wants to admit. Nobody knows what they're doing 100% of the time. Professionals don't magically know everything. They're just more comfortable navigating the unknown. They've solved enough problems to trust that they can solve new ones. That's the difference. Beginners panic when something breaks. Professionals troubleshoot calmly. Masters anticipate and prevent the break entirely. Now let's talk about good taste, one of the most powerful skills an artist can have. Good taste is knowing what looks good, even if you don't yet know how to create it. Good taste is recognizing imbalance before others do. Good taste is sensing when a color is wrong. Good taste is seeing when a composition feels empty. Good taste is understanding when a silhouette lacks strength. Good taste leads your growth. Skill follows it. Now let's focus on something often overlooked. Your artistic voice emerges from your imperfections. The way you simplify shapes, the way you choose colors, the way you exaggerate proportions, the way you light scenes, the way you handle detail, the way you break rules. These imperfections become your signature. Perfection is forgettable. Imperfection is recognizable. Now let's talk about something deeply practical, building a mental library. The more you observe, the more you model, the more you sculpt, the more you texture, the larger your mental library becomes. You start remembering how metal reflects light, how skin absorbs shadows, how cloth folds, how surfaces erode, how light bounces off smooth material, how organic shapes should flow, how mechanical parts should align. Your mental library becomes your most powerful tool. Now let's go into something transformative, the moment 3D stops being confusing. This moment doesn't arrive suddenly, but gradually things begin to click. You understand why topology flows a certain way. You understand why the lighting feels wrong. You understand why the material looks flat. You understand why the composition lacks depth. You understand how to fix problems, not just identify them. This moment is a quiet revolution. It's when you stop fighting your tools and start commanding them. Now let's talk about something every artist struggles with, self-comparison. Social media amplifies comparison. You see nothing but polished work. You see nothing but highlight reels. You see nothing but people who seem better, faster, more creative. But comparison is a trap. You are comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's final product. Your journey is unique. Your timeline is different. Your growth rate is personal. You're not behind. You're evolving. Now let's talk about something grounding. Your future work will make your current work look weak, and that's good. If you look back 6 months and think, wow, my old work wasn't that good, that means you're improving. If you look back and still love everything you made, that means you're not growing. Your future self should constantly outperform your past self. Now let's end this part with something powerful. You're not just learning 3D, you're training your mind. You're teaching yourself patience. You're teaching yourself discipline. You're teaching yourself problem solving. You're teaching yourself observation. You're teaching yourself resilience. You're teaching yourself creativity. You're teaching yourself persistence. 3D reshapes your brain, one vertex at a time, one render at a time, one improvement at a time. You're not just becoming a 3D artist, you're becoming someone capable of creating worlds. If you made it to the end of this video, you're one of the real ones. Your commitment to learning and growth shows. Comment, I'm here till the last frame, so I know you reached the end. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Somebody out there needs to hear this. Wishing you success in everything you're building.